You know that saying, strike while the iron is hot? For me, it's strike while the coffee is fresh. All right, everybody, welcome back to hopefully the last filming of a studio tour. I think I've recorded this thing about 3 times now. The first one I actually published, I didn't like it very much, so I decided to redo everything and get a little bit more personal in the stories that I tell about why certain things are in my office, why they're important to me. Hopefully I don't talk too much. If I do, I'll apologize in advance. So let's get into it. This is my office. It is in my basement, and I'm going to break this down wall by wall, section by section. So certain things are going to be a little bit shorter, certain things are going to be a little bit longer, but there's going to be at least 4 parts. So be patient as I get through them. This is going to be the first part, and instead of going to the right, like I normally would, because that's what I learned to do when I played Doom and Duke Nukem, I'm going to go to the left and just mix things up a little bit. I hope you're entertained, educated, and stick around for part 2. But for now, let's get started. You may have seen this in some of my other videos. This is a Norwegian flag, and it's important to me because I have Norwegian ancestors, so I put it in here. Sorry about the glare on the glass, but this is a photo of the farm from 2007, and I'll back up a little bit. The farm, as I call it, was where my father grew up in central Nebraska, and our family started it in 1884. It has since gone out of the family. Below that, you will see the Hollingsworth crest. So my mom's mom, my grandmother, was a direct descendant of Valentine Hollingsworth, who is probably mostly well known for being a Quaker and a friend to William Penn, as in the guy that, you know, started Pennsylvania. But now we can get into the meat of this particular wall. Alright, so on this wall we have a lot going on, and there's a lot of stories. So I think we'll just start at the top and go top to bottom, left to right, just like we'd read, because guess what? There's a whole lot of books here to get through. No, I'm not going to go through each one, but there's a big reason why I have a lot of books and why I enjoy reading. And it goes back to, on my mother's side, her sister, Diana, was married to my uncle, Phil. Uncle Phil was gracious enough to invite my father and I to his parents' home in Chicago. And it, from what I recall, it was basically an invitation to come, take whatever you want, and be happy. I remember seeing what I thought at the time was a complete collection of Hardy Boy books. So I saw this collection, and they were just so cool looking, and they had dust covers on them, and they were in excellent shape. And it sounds weird, but what really got me hooked on them was the smell. And if you've ever smelled an old antique book, you know what I'm talking about. There's just something about it that gets you going. So we took that collection of books, along with others, took them home, and it turned out that was really what got me hooked on reading. And I started with the Hardy Boys and have since expanded into everything. But the Hardy Boys was really what I cut my teeth on when I got into reading. And I would stay up late at night, way past my bedtime. And I'd always get yelled at, "Neil, it's time for bed." Well, I know it's time for bed, Dad. That's why I shoved a shirt under the bottom of the door so you wouldn't tell that the light was on. I loved to read, got hooked. So it was really because of Uncle Phil and his generosity in saying, "Come and take these." So it's fitting that at the top of the shelf I have Hardy Boy book. So you can see they're old-timey books with real dust jackets on them, and some of them even have, probably won't be able to find it now, some of them even have artwork in them. And these books, the brown cover books, are the older ones that are released in, I believe, 30s and 40s, 50s. The blue covers were a re-release in the 60s and 70s, I think, and then they re-released the blue covers in the 90s, and they also came out with another series called The Case Files, and I know I'm nerding out on books. So as you can see, these are the Case Files, and I have nearly a complete collection. And I loved these because they were so short and easy to read. You know, only 100, 200 pages. And then I also collected Super Mysteries, which is where Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys would team up to solve, well, super mysteries. So what you see here is only a portion of my collection. Over at my dad's house, we have the old ones and the blue ones. These are all of the ones that I purchased with my own money as a kid. And I loved them so much. I got into Tom Swift and the Super Mysteries, and really just about anything related to the Hardy Boys. So that was a start. So that progressed into reading other books by other authors like R.A. Salvatore, and eventually I got into two things that got me into trouble. One, collecting, and two, Star Wars. And by collecting, I mean collecting. Complete collections, full sets of everything. And that started with the Hardy Boys. My dad and I found out that original Hardy Boy collection wasn't quite complete. So we'd go to antique stores and buy them whenever we found them. And we had a spreadsheet and a list and everything. So that came out of that. The Star Wars, I've been a fan of Star Wars since I saw the first movie in the theater in 1980. Which, as a Star Wars fan, you'll know that wasn't the first movie. That was Empire Strikes Back in 1980. The first movie was in 77, but I was only a year old then. Didn't see it then. But I remember in 1980, and I think again in 83, seeing Return of the Jedi in the theater. So I've always been a Star Wars fan. When that got combined with Star Wars books and my collecting habits, I really got into trouble with collecting Star Wars books. Not real trouble, but huge financial investment. At the time, I had no money, but I would spend everything I had on Star Wars books. And I can remember the first set of books that I saw in the store was by Timothy Zahn. And I was blown away that there was a Star Wars book out there. My addiction to collecting Star Wars books grew exponentially. It grew to the point of me collecting every single Star Wars book that was ever printed, including multiple copies of the same book, signed copies of books, kids' books. Every single thing that came out, I collected. Now, as I collected these books, I finally got to a point where I just had to stop. And it was mostly because the compulsion or desire to have a complete collection became nearly impossible because the number of books that was being written and released grew exponentially to the point where I couldn't keep up. There were so many books coming out so fast that I couldn't buy them all. I couldn't afford to buy them all. And they started coming out with, I hate to say it, but some ridiculous stuff. And I never got into coloring books or sticker books or weird stuff like that. It was strictly the novels is what got me hooked. So I tried to stay in that genre, but you've got kids' books, graphic novels, comics, and they all just, it just exploded. The market exploded. So I had to stop. And when my favorite author, R.A. Salvatore, wrote the first book, Vector Prime, in a new series called The New Jedi Order, that was like the peak of me collecting Star Wars books. I had been a Salvatore fan for years by this point. Years. Decades. So that was the apex. Unfortunately, there was a very rapid decline after that. Not because of what Salvatore wrote in Vector Prime. All you Star Wars fans that have read the book and hate what he did, I understand that. But let me tell you, I was okay with it. So, Salvatore writes Vector Prime. It is the best thing that ever happened to me in reading Star Wars. And Salvatore. I loved the New Jedi Order series. But when that one came to an end, that was when things started getting a little bit weird, and that whole market explosion, super saturated with books. I couldn't do it anymore, and I had to stop. So again, I'm not blaming Salvatore for that, or even what he did in the book. We're cool, man. We're cool. There were a few other things I got into along the way, like history books, true crime, more fantasy, a few classics. But let's talk about what else you see on this shelf. Stormtroopers. I know all you Star Wars geeks are asking, dude, what's up with the troopers? Actually, no, all you Star Wars geeks get it. All you non-Star Wars people want to know what's up with the Stormtroopers. Well, I started collecting Stormtroopers. Online in message boards, I was known as TK421, and it has stuck with me ever since. So I have a lot of Stormtroopers. Big troopers. I have little troopers. I have trooper heads, trooper torsos, all white troopers, little kid troopers, trooper keychains, Han Solo as a trooper in disguise, black troopers, troopers still in their boxes, Christmas ornament troopers, stormtrooper watches, stormtrooper license plates, stormtrooper helmets, stormtrooper lights, big stormtrooper lights, stormtrooper helmet lights, Lego Stormtroopers, Stormtrooper bookends, Burger King Stormtroopers, more Stormtrooper license plates, Stormtrooper stickers, Stormtrooper Lucky Charms, Stormtrooper hats, Stormtrooper socks, a Stormtrooper watch. So, a lot of Stormtroopers. But let's finish up with the top of the shelf here, and we'll see what's going on there. So up here, we have the books that I have yet to read. I'm in the middle of Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5 books to go. I have running books, history books, Jimmy Stewart, Pilot, you name it, I'm in the middle of reading it. Oh, and over there, yeah, we have some stuff from my last job that we're just not going to talk about. So, that's it. If you've hung around this long, I really appreciate it. Hopefully, it gave you a little bit of insight into my history, about me, and what's in my studio, what's in my office. And I don't know. I always feel like I talk too much in these things. Man. That's all I got. I don't know what else to say. However long this thing is, I'm sure it is long enough. So, I hope you got some coffee.